All right, it's harvest time. You've been meticulous all season, right? Making sure your seeds were planted, machinery was free from prohibited substances. You've applied for certification, and the crops they're looking good in the field. It's the most exciting time of year, and your work is about to pay off. But in organics, it can also be a key opportunity to make some really big mistakes that can throw all that work down the tubes, and with it, that price premium. So for the most part, harvest is harvest, whether the field is certified organic or not. That said, there are some key considerations and proven strategies to ensure that the crop maintains its value, machinery isn't worked overly hard, with weedy fields can stress machinery, and the farmer maximizes their yield and profit. Like anything we do in organic, we need a good plan. We need to develop that step-by-step strategy to clean out all of the equipment, identify how to combine effectively through weedier fields, monitor for that crop quality, and make sure we have sufficient storage options. In this lesson, we're going to be covering those considerations and strategies to make sure that your high-value organic crop gets to the buyer in great shape, and that there's no worry about a rejected load. We'll look at harvest planning, parallel operation considerations, dealing with custom operators, record keeping, and effective cleanout protocols. So let's start with the obvious, developing a good harvest plan. Be aware of potential quality and storage problems before harvest. Identify and make a plan for those weedier areas in your fields. Note your diseased areas and anywhere that there's immature plants. Oftentimes, weed and disease pressures are located in isolated spots. If you can cut around them, it'll make managing the harvest a whole lot easier. We have several examples of common diseases and weeds to watch for in the lesson notes. Of course, using your own experience and best judgment is going to be the surest way to keep harvest humming. When it comes to combining weedy fields, which, sometimes can happen on organic farms, it can be both hard on the combine, but also require the combiner to go more slowly through the field. Each additional pound of foreign material brings that dockage penalty up. Depending on the crop, farmers do have some options. Swathing small grains allows the farmer to plant later, terminate consistently, and dry down all of the plant material in the swath. This allows for better combining, feeding, and less gumming up inside the combine from wet weeds. Be sure to watch your combine settings to make sure that the fan speed, the drive speed, and those other controls are accurately adjusted to reflect weedier conditions in the field. The less foreign material in a load, the lower the dockage at the scale. In row crops, there are fewer options. Using a weed trimmer or lightning weeder on lower stature crops like beans might be an option, but preventative measures are still the best way to go. Now let's move on to parallel operations. If a farmer is running conventional and organic ground, a clean out will be necessary every time we transition equipment from conventional to organic ground. Most parallel farmers harvest all conventional and then all organic to limit the number of times they have to clean out between the two sides of the operation. This works well if organic is maturing a little bit later anyway, on account of being planted a little bit later. But if everything is ready to harvest at the same time, or organic is looking good a little earlier, a farmer can harvest organic first and avoid that clean out, assuming the combine was cleaned the previous fall. If there's any worry about pesticide drift or genetic trespass from a conventional to an organic field, it's common to harvest a strip or two around the field edges, sell that as conventional to reduce the risk of contamination and ultimately a rejected load. After taking that grain off, a careful clean out of all equipment would be necessary. This is also true if you decide to plant and harvest a crop in your buffer zones. Remember, responsibility is on the organic farmer to deliver a pesticide-free load to the buyer. Next, let's talk about custom operators. Some custom operators are familiar with organics and the need to clean out and keep really good records about that clean out. However, I'm going to say most are not, and even those who are familiar may be likely to cut some corners to maximize their profit and reduce job time. It's important to have an explicitly clear understanding with a custom operator about what the expectations are about cleanouts. Effective cleanout logs can be simple. They should include the operator's name, the date, the method of cleaning used, sweeping, compressed air, washing out, and who did that clean out. It should be a practice on every single farm that the organic farmer inspect any and all custom equipment coming onto that farm prior to harvest to just make sure that it really was cleaned out properly. Don't be shy to turn that truck around if it comes on and you smell that it had just hauled fertilizer or gravel or road salt or conventional corn. Skepticism and perfectionism can be helpful traits when dealing with organic compliance. That's what keeps quality and profits high. Lastly, let's bring it all together and talk about cleanliness. We've mentioned cleanouts and the records you need to keep a lot already. So let's dig into that a little bit more. If you're familiar with any kind of identity preserved program, non-GMO, variety specific, contract grown, you understand the importance of an effective cleanout and keeping records on those cleanouts. If a farmer doesn't hire any custom harvesters and all of their ground is organic, cleanouts won't be quite as relevant, though obviously important from a quality standpoint between your crops. However, for split operations, farmers who hire out harvesters or producers who don't have good isolation from conventional neighbors, it can mean the difference between a profitable organic crop and a rejected load. Check out the lesson notes to dig deeper into cleanout forms and some resources. While the list of potential pieces of equipment on any organic farm is going to be really long, let's close this lesson with an abbreviated summary of which pieces of equipment every farm is likely going to have to clean out at some point and what best practices we can use to do that well. So, the combine. Break out that shop vac and air compressor wand, because that combine is one of the most time-consuming pieces of equipment to clean. By running it dry while you blast the different augers, screens, and grain tank with compressed air, the combine itself can assist you in ejecting any conventional grain that still might be hidden inside. It's a good idea, even after thoroughly vacuuming and blowing out a combine, to run about 10 bushels through the combine as a purge, where you take organic grain, purge it through the combine, and get rid of it as conventional grain. Next, your grain carts, your wagons, your trucks, your semis, your hopper trailers. Open up all of the hopper bottoms and the slide gates and blow out every inch of the trailer. Make sure to get the top rail edges as well as the seams where grain likes to hide. If the grain trailer was used to transport a prohibited substance in addition to grain, say treated seed, then washing out that unit will be the surest way that you don't have a contamination problem later on. Before you finish the clean out, unroll any and all tarps to verify that no grain got rolled up inside them and could come loose on top of your organic grain when you cover it back up. Augers. Run your augers out completely and then purge with a few bushels of organic grain. This will be the safest way to ensure residual grain doesn't become a contaminant. Grain bins. Grain storage on the organic farm is such an integral part of the infrastructure that it can often be something we just overlook when we're talking about cleaning. I like to think about March as a good grain bin cleaning month. It's not terribly cold out, it's also not terribly hot out yet, and I've hopefully shipped all my crops. Many farmers I've seen have a fairly similar routine when it comes to cleaning out those bins. In a flat bottom bin, start with scraping out all the crusties from last year's crops. Any spots around the door that might have gotten a little wet, might be a little crusty, and generally the macro stuff left from last year's harvest. Then, sweep that bin out. Get it really well swept out where it's just dust left. After you sweep, take your compressed air and the long wand and just blow off all of the walls. Get it really dusty. Make sure you have that mask on. And then give it a couple hours just to settle down. After that, break out the shop vac and just suck up all of that dirt. Pay really close attention that you have gotten all of the old conventional grain out to make sure that you don't have the bin ultimately be your source of a rejected load. If you have a hopper bottom bin, take compressed air, open the unloading door, and blow the interior through the loading lid on top of the bin so that all the dust and debris flows down and out through the unloading door. Cleaning bins does take time, and it can be a major source of contamination. So cut yourself some slack at harvest time and get those bins cleaned out early and cleaned out well. All right, so let's wrap this up. While harvest is harvest, it would be too easy to assume that harvesting and storing organic grain is no different than conventional. Though the principles and practices aren't rocket science and may seem like common sense, they are the last link in the chain from seed purchase to crop sale that the farmer has control over. Control to maximize yields and profits, or control over retaining or losing that organic certified status.